there will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
It's an exciting time to be involved in Bitcoin Cash at the moment.
During that whole war, Lightning versus big blocks, like were we the bad guys? Were we the ones that weren't listening?
Fundamentally, we believe in markets, transparency, and tokenization.
Come on, you gotta come stronger than that, you know, like...
I got to get that right as well. Mathieu
Geukens, but yeah, Geukens. In English, okay. It's hard to pronounce. Yeah, Geukens.
Mathieu Geukens. All right.
Yeah.
I'll do my best. All right.
Appreciate.
Hang on. Can we please add Roger partying with the crew? Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. We're good to go.
Thanks. Okay. All right. Take two. Okay. Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. This is episode number 77, Cash Tokens and Community Collaboration, featuring Mathieu Geukens. Hopefully I got that right.
Exactly.
That's it. Perfect. All right, there we go. I'm on a roll. Today is Saturday, the 22nd of April, 2023. I'm your host, Jeremy. Jett is in the producer's chair, same as always. And our guest is a full-time Bitcoin Cash developer that I've just learned for the last year and moderator of the BCH, what's it called? BCH channel on Telegram, one of the biggest hubs for discussion of the Bitcoin Cash community, especially through the whole years with the fork wars and everything, I expect. So welcome to the show, man. How'd you get into Bitcoin?
Excited to be here. I first learned about Bitcoin and crypto in 2017, the big bull run. And then it took me like a year. So the first crypto I got into was actually Ethereum and Litecoin, because Bitcoin had high fees. So that I understood right away. Bitcoin has high fees. So got into Ethereum and a bit of Litecoin. And then it took me a year. And then I discovered all about the block size wars and the scaling debates. And then I became a Bitcoin Cash supporter like in 2018, I think in the summer, and been since.
So what was that like? I'm always curious to hear everybody's story. You know, we've had the whole gamut from people who were, in before the fork, in after the fork, in during the fork, found their way one side to the other, different ways. Some people did it like quickly. Some people did it like slowly, step by step. They had to try a bunch of other stuff. It sounds like it took you, maybe a year or so, but you were relatively quick to get to the bottom of it, it sounds like. And for me, it's always hard to imagine, because when I found Bitcoin, it just was Bitcoin, right? So it having high fees was not like something I had to unlearn. I just always took it to be that way. But did you find that bizarre? Or just tell me about that.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a confusing time to get into Bitcoin, because I remember watching SegWit videos and SegWit 2x and what to be excited about, but I didn't understand any of it pretty much. So I left that by the wayside, and then I kept trying to learn. Also went on a bit of a detour, like with ASIC resistant mining, with all kinds of detours, but slowly and steadily kept on learning. And then by now I feel like I have a grasp on the ecosystem at least. So.
Yeah, you've got it. You're fully absorbed into the into the mess of things, into our.
So I also remember how I bought my first crypto, because I was 17 at the time. I'm a real millennial. So 17 couldn't buy it from exchanges, had to make an account, got rejected. So I bought it peer-to-peer from a friend who had an older brother. So I just bought in cash and then received it to my wallet. So I thought that was a first cool experience. I couldn't use exchanges, so my first experience was my own wallet, non-custodial. I had to back up the keys. I learned it the right way, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of this does seem to come down to how people learned about it, like especially in the early days, if you were trying to buy something sketchy online, you sort of had to get a bit more of a handle on it, right? And then you had people who got into it sort of via Coinbase or speculating, or now I hear a lot of people with Binance, and they sort of haven't really got the message about it. I was talking to somebody at work the other day about all this, and she was asking me about it or what it was and crypto and everything. She actually knew quite a bit about crypto, but she was telling me that she'd been using Binance, or she'd seen people using Binance and all that. And she said, how is this revolutionary though? That's why I don't get everybody's so excited about this. But I've just been trying this app and it hasn't really impressed me or whatever. And I said, look here, let me show you. And I sent her some proper non-custodial BCH. And then it was like suddenly like the lights were going on and she was like, oh, okay, wait, this is not sort of what I thought of as crypto. And there's, hundreds of millions of people probably at this point in that stage. So it's something we're going to see a lot of. And I think when people are talking to anyone about crypto, you sort of have to do a little temperature check with them as you're explaining it. You can kind of see in their eyes. Are they with it or not? Or, sometimes they have very different ideas of, okay, is it a currency?
Misconceptions. They think they know all kinds of stuff, but
they don't. Yeah, that's right. It's absolutely crazy. And you're a software developer as well. Like you said, you're doing it full time for a year now. So what's your sort of technical background? Obviously, we're going to be talking a bit about that. So you got to impress the listeners with your credentials.
So I'm self-taught. So I think that's a credential. And I learned it because I wanted to deploy like a Bitcoin Cash website. So I learned about like HTML, CSS, like slowly from the bottom. So didn't start with anything fancy. And then over the years, while I was at college, so I was studying economics. And then I had some free time, so I always kept trying to. Yeah, it's not true that I always kept it. Like I found out early that both economics and programming were my interests, and I didn't know what to study in college. And I ended up picking economics because I thought, programming. There's so many resources online. You can teach it yourself, and that's what I ended up doing. And now I'm less interested in the mainstream economic stuff because I had a chance to continue with that route, doing another year of college on more advanced studies in economics. But for me, it was enough economics. I also find my niche because I'm very interested in the Austrian School of Economics, and that isn't the stuff that you learn at university. So,
it's fascinating. Like you say, being self-taught, that's always a pro in my book. It's definitely really interesting to see. Like software engineering is one of the most sort of self-taught things in that respect. I mean, there are obviously other things like to some extent. Okay,
I did use courses. I used Codecademy, for example. I had a very good time learning with them. And when I like reactivated my account in I think 2018 or 2000, something like that. Then I saw that my account was made in 2013. So I already did. I already started learning programming like well before. I think I did some Python or something, but never really found a use case. And then I wanted to work on Bitcoin Cash stuff. So then I needed to learn all about websites and then eventually the blockchain stuff. How to make my own wallet. So, that's what I'm working on now. So.
Yeah, it's super fascinating with the way I think self-teaching yourself anything teaches you a lot of things besides the actual thing that you're learning. Sort of, it teaches you, ways of reasoning. How do you find new information? What to do when you get stuck at a certain point?
Yeah.
And for something like computer science, especially, or programming, it's such a hard thing to do, maybe more than a lot of things, because it's so frustrating. And you can get an error message that is just nobody has seen this error message, or is very obscure.
But I feel like I still have major black spots in my computer science knowledge. For example, all the more theoretical stuff about algorithms and sorting and all kinds of data structures. So the more low level stuff, I still need to learn a lot, but I feel that I can learn what I need to learn. So that's an important takeaway too. You'll figure it out as you go.
The good thing about being self-aware about that is like you don't have to know those algorithms. You just have to recognize when they might be applicable, and then people have already implemented the algorithms in every language you can think of. So you just copy paste, you're good to go. You need, I think, just to understand enough to know if something goes wrong, how might I tinker to fix this? But you don't need to memorize. I think that's something that people get so hung up on when they think about going into programming, like, oh, I need to have all this stuff. No, you're spending half your day Googling stuff. Like, there's still very basic syntax things that I don't memorize because I don't need to. I'll fucking Google it when the time comes, and as long as it works.
Yeah.
Exactly. I have heard of mates of mine and stuff. I've not been in this situation, but I've heard of people getting into software design interviews and stuff, and the person asking them a question and then basically like saying, I'd Google it and look up the docs. And the person's looking at them like, oh, I don't know, but I don't know. The points down for that. You just think, look, I don't want to work anywhere where they're marking people that's the correct answer in so many circumstances, right? Is just look it up. I find it fascinating because it's one of my favorite quotes is the Yogi Berra quote, in theory and practice are the same, and in practice they're not. That's essentially just what it comes down to. Like I've never done, some university course. I have some algorithmic trainings the same as you. I'm sure there's some things about that I don't know, but I often find that I know a lot of things that come up. I just don't know the name for them. I'm like, I've already, found it myself or discovered it or seen it in a repo or whatever, but I didn't know it was so-and-so's theory of whatever or, or something like that. And I always tend to, back people who have practical experience over theoretical experience. I've never been one much for academic credentials. Not that doesn't have its place, but I just tend to see that there's a huge gap between walking the walk and
but I think still coding interviews have like a prominent place, and probably unfortunately, but I was able to like side pass that. But I did some like training for like technical interviews, and that probably helped me, but also it was also probably unnecessary looking back at it.
For people who've never done a coding test interview or been in programming or something, it's a very like strange part of the industry because essentially the spread is very, very wide. Like it's very arbitrary. There's not really any sort of standardized set of this is a good problem or this is what it should involve or whatever. So some companies like where I work, for instance, when we interview people, we don't do technical interviews. I actually dislike that. I'm very happy to just talk to someone for half an hour and I will know whether they know their stuff by their answers. I don't need to see them run any code to do that. At least not reliably, for the sort of positions we're hiring for. But then some companies, it's like they're basically getting you to do free work. They're asking you to like build a piece of their software essentially, and then just as credit, but then you're stuck as the candidate because you don't know what exactly you're supposed to do. Because if you put a lot of time into it and you do a really good job, well, then you're investing a lot in it when they might not even hire you. And so that's kind of ridiculous. But on the other hand, if you don't do a good enough job and then they don't want to give you the job because you didn't do a good job, well, then what? Or you can be in a situation where you've done a really good job, but they don't recognize it. And I've been in that situation too, where they gave me a spec or whatever. I built, what they wanted. And then they sat down and said, can we talk through your code? I said, yeah, sure. So we went through it and they were like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. Or why'd you do this? That kind of thing. And I'm like, look, it meets the spec and it's all like clean code. Like any good engineer would be able to figure out I'm not doing anything weird here. This is not a mess. But they just didn't like it for some reason. And so I was stuck. It's just the most bizarre part of a programmer's life. Anyway, little insight there for everybody who's not a programmer. Okay, we got to talk about the price. We always do at the start of every episode. It's not the bull run yet. Maybe crypto's been having a bit of a rough week. US dollars, $120.73. BCH down a little bit. One BTC buys 227.1 BCH, down slightly on that ratio. And one ETH buys 15.4 BCH. So also down slightly on the ratio there. We are at number 29. At the moment, we've been at 28 for a while, but dropped to 1 because Internet Computer is back from the dead. They were like up high on the ranks until everybody realized they were a scam, and then they were out of there. But for some reason, they've pumped back. They're back. It's like the zombies, you can never get rid of them. All these like terrible coins that have no community, and it's just, I don't know, they get a fresh round of VCs on the hook or something, and then they pump up the market cap. But made me laugh when I saw that they were back on the menu. So What do you do with the volatility in the markets? Are you much of a trader? Do you still own a variety of coins? Like you said, you were into Litecoin, Ethereum. Do you still have those? How do you deal with
currently, I'm very good at ignoring the price because it's like just going sideways anyways. So yeah, I haven't paid close attention to the price like in a long time. I think, it's pretty sad that we're below internet computer, but I said on Twitter, remember when we like at the fifth place on coin market cap, and people reminded me, no, we were actually at place 3 at the third place. So yeah, being below internet computer and Ethereum Classic, yeah, it's not a great spot, but I'm optimistic for the future.
ETH Classic, I don't feel kind of terrible about. I mean, ETH Classic at least has a real community, and I always
but
feel
how high is Shiba Inu again? And like,
yeah, well, that's right. Shiba Inu, maybe not, right? But it just goes to show you that with all the manipulated like market supply dynamics and all that kind of plays into it, right? Shiba Inu, there's probably only like 0.01% of it available for sale. You know, it's probably 99% locked up by the founders or something like that. And there's just this tiny amount, which is on, what's that app called? Robinhood, that everybody was using. Did they put it on that? And then it just pumped it through the roof. And then now there's a whole bunch of like 12-year-olds who bought some who've forgotten their wallets. And it's burned all the supply of what is sort of available. And the founders are like, damn, we can't cash out because we'll immediately crater the market. So they might just be kind of stuck. But yeah, it's pretty funny. Market cap's such an arbitrary metric, but it's definitely definitely funny to observe all the different coins and their fortunes. Right. So first thing we got to get onto, which is your innovations with the CashTokens web wallet. So you have coded up probably the first, I would say, actual wallet to support the upcoming upgrade to CashTokens, which is on May the 15th, so 23 days away from the day of recording. And that was letting people experiment and play around with it on the chipnet, on the test network before it went live. So explain this project. Why did you decide to do this, and how's it been going so far?
Yeah, so mainly because when nobody was doing it, so I saw an opportunity to create something cool. And yeah, so I would say that was the main reason. I'm also thinking about like integrations into the future, because some projects would like unique, for example, a tokenized AnyHedge would have to have a unique integration into the web wallet, something like that. And I saw the opportunity because apart from with this mainnet.js library, they added CashToken support. So it was not that hard for me to start building with it. So I owe a huge debt to him, because alone it would have been a lot more work. So I was able to piggy bank on the work of others. So because he made a cool library and then he implemented the CashToken support, but nobody did anything with it. So I was like, this is very unfortunate. Why is it that hard to use? And then I tried it, and it was actually very easy to use. I also found some bugs and some missing features, but I kept into contact with him, and now the library is even in a better place than before. And yeah, the web wallet is working great. So I'm actually very glad with how it turned out. I think it's mostly finished. I'm not planning to do any major changes before just porting it over to mainnet. Probably the one thing that's still missing is easy denomination in like dollars, so that you can just send $5. Currently, it's denominated in either Satoshis or Bitcoin Cash itself. So a small UI tweak, but and maybe even, like you mentioned, to make it even simpler to create tokens, because creating tokens is easy, but attaching the metadata is still like a bit of a complex process. Like you can figure it out if you take your time, but it's not as easy like for non-technical people, because they need to learn about GitHub gist and like JSON format, and maybe some using a code editor to check the format is right, or so not the easiest yet.
Yeah, because obviously everybody in the community has been super excited about this upgrade coming up, and I think we all should be. But I think it's also very important to emphasize the fact that it's not going to, this is not sending the price to the moon overnight, right? Yeah, it's very exciting. And over the long run, it's going to make a titanic difference. People will be able to see in 2 years or in 5 years, how incredible it is. I don't think that's all empty hype. But on the other hand, you see some people saying, oh, we're having this upgrade. Is it going to pump? I've already seen that on the day of release, May 15th. Is it going to go to the moon? And the answer is no, because while we've got some stuff starting to come together for this technology, it's only the very, very, very baby steps of what people have been working on. And like you said, there's a lot that goes into it in terms of the developer tooling as well.
Yeah. So there's a lot of layers to software. So first you need like the blockchain to upgrade, and that was like ChipNet, and then that includes the nodes. So first the technical specification, then the blockchain with a few of the nodes. And then you need some libraries like Leopard to upgrade, and then because those are very low level, and then you need like main.js or BCH.js, like high level libraries to work with these new tools. And then finally you can have like wallets, and once they're wallets, then you can have applications. So there's many steps involved into being able to make your cash tokens application. So
that's right.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. That's right. And then even after you have the wallets or the applications, then you still need usually some UI refinement, some front end work, maybe some designers come in, then maybe you need some marketing and advertising to get it through to a bunch of people, right? So that you're right. There's so many layers to it. But the critical thing for me is to understand that because there's so many layers, it takes quite a long time, but the funnel kind of spreads outward, if you see what I'm saying. Like you only need a couple of people to do a really good job in the spec, and then you have a slightly broader pool of people who are the node developers above that, and then above that the library devs. You only need a few good people. So this is one of the reasons that I am so bullish on BCH, and I think in some ways we're in a really good position because BCH community isn't necessarily one of the biggest in crypto, but it has a very, very strong and very, very solid technical core. So those people can do so much heavy lifting in terms of technical infrastructure that then when the marketing and the promotion starts to rise and other people come into the community, well, if you're a dev, you don't want to be having to dig into all these different layers of stuff. You just want to see, okay, the libraries are there and the documentation. I just show up and I can just be building an app quickly, right? That's what happened in Ethereum. And so I think that's what we're going to replicate and see here. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, not what
where would you say that we're most lacking in that like for you, for a dev to come in and just say, okay, let's just get something going? Do you have any specific areas that you see as thinking that could use some serious improvement?
Yeah, the one thing I just noticed is currently it's a great time to build because everything's quiet, but also I feel that some people who might be sitting on the fence, developers, won't jump in because everything is so quiet. I think it would be good to have some more applications and hype. So I think that's just the main thing missing, just some proven profitable use cases, and then the rest will follow. But if those are not present, then other people lack the motivation or the confirmation that anyone would use it or is excited about their tools.
Okay, and how are you funding this whole web wallet? Like, obviously, it's amazing that you've just built all this, and you said you're doing full-time on BCH dev work. Where's the money coming from that? Did you maybe run a Flipstarter or something?
The web wallet isn't funded. So apart from main.js, who was doing the lower level work, he has been funded through Flipstarter. I got funded through Flipstarter for my work on CashCrypt. So I've been working a few months on that with Roscoe. So that's a separate thing. So I'm just combining different projects. So I'm not working on like one thing specifically. I'm working on a few different things at once.
Well, here we go. This is a perfect example of what I'm saying is you're just doing double duty on multiple projects, right? That's also another thing, which can actually be quite good in the sort of devs, sort of more hobbyist or more passionate devs being involved in the community is they will, if they get a bit bored, instead of just like going off to, I'm going to make an AI thing this week, you can just work on another part of BCH, right? You can spread it out a bit and keep yourself interested, but it's all still pushing in the same direction. So that's actually something very nice that we've got in our favor. I was playing around with the wallet last night, so people can find that at https://my-cashtokens-webwallet.netlify.app. That's Netlify, Netlify.
I still need to get a proper domain set up. So,
What are you going to call it? Do you have a name, or is
no,
it just
that's
going to
the
be the
problem.
Cash Tokens web wallet?
I'm not great. Yeah, my creativity hasn't been coming through lately, so I've just been focused on the technicals.
Okay. Jett, do you have a suggestion?
My Cash Tokens web wallet worked when it was the only web wallet like for ChipNet, but probably for mainnet it will have to be called something else. So that's probably the biggest to do for me is think about rebranding. Yeah.
I don't have a suggestion for a domain or anything, but if you need any assistance with hosting or SSL or any of that shit, let me know. I feel like I've slowly been building up my sysadmin skills, and I want to get better at it, but this is something that I recently helped Jeremy with. And
the flip starter, yeah. Cheers for that.
Thanks for the offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you love to see this kind of grassroots innovation coming through. And like you said, there was a bit of a gap in the market. So hopefully we'll be seeing more and more of the wallets sort of lock into place as everybody starts to implement this same thing. Classically, one of the things we've seen, well, maybe not classically is the right word, but the bitcoin.com team, a lot of people I've seen have been asking, are they going to support cash tokens? Because everybody's so excited. Are they going to put that in there? And for anybody who doesn't know, Corbin, who's one of the guys who works at bitcoin.com, he posted a reply on Twitter to somebody asking about that and said, well, we're keeping an eye on it, but we're not going to be like rushing in to implement it and he made a very good point, which was that obviously as a company, they're sort of shifting away from BCH overall, but also on top of that, they've done SLP tokens and there was Wormhole and there was lots of different things that kind of came up as, this has been the great thing. And they've implemented those things time and time again. And then they've kind of withered and died on the vine, in various ways, right? I don't think this time is going to be the same because this time it's actually implemented at the protocol level. It's been thought out a lot more and everybody's a lot more bought in, I would say. So I don't think it's going to be the same, but it's fair enough that they would be one step removed from that,
and also the cash tokens ecosystem on launch, so it's probably good to think about that. So it's my wallet for sure, and also Paytaca is working on cash tokens integration. Then there's Electron Cash that just got funded like yesterday, so they will be also having cash token support. But I think that's the only three with like Sepit working on it. And then for block explorers, there's one explorer that I already upgraded and was also on ChipNet. And then there's another one funded, which places emphasis on all the metadata stuff. So I think it's important to emphasize. So some of the wallets like Electron Cash, they will upgrade, but they might not have metadata on like day one. So this means you will have to look at your 32 byte token ID or something to know which token you're dealing with. But otherwise, you can have a logo and a name attached or linked to the blockchain or to IPFS. So not all wallets will support that right away. So the ecosystem on launch day will be like very small, right? But then over time, I'm sure it will grow a lot because it is on the blockchain level. So wallets can ignore it, but they just like missing a part of the UTXO data, the token information.
Yeah, and that's something that I think also bears repeating is that people don't need to be, it will be exciting and I'm definitely hype for the release and everything, but I'm also, trying to temper at least mine, everyone else's expectations that's just going to go off immediately. But for the same reason as that, it's important to think, wow, this is going to make a huge difference in the long run. And the reason is because once you get the upgrade in, it's in, right? It's not going to need a lot of maintenance and fixing and updates and that kind of thing. There'll be some of that, right? But most of that will go on at the higher level, at the application level and, or the design level, the UI level. Like I said about that pyramid, as it widens out, the reason that it widens out is because the lower pieces, once they lock into place, they're sort of more solid, they're harder to change because the foundations then impacts everything else, right? So once it's in, probably by this time next year with the 2024 upgrade, we'll be talking about, what about UTXO commitments and what about this and what about that? But that will be just adding on, like it's an exponential cumulative increase in the power with every subsequent thing, right? And once all that stuff is baked in, we don't know. There'll be devs that come into BCH in 2 years' time when cash tokens is not the most hype thing that everybody's excited about, but still they'll find it and be like, wow, this is really good. I need to plug into all this stuff, or it will just become assumed as part of supporting BCH, as we see maybe like Coinbase or more generic Edge wallet or whatever, any of these multi-coin wallets, if they start jumping on this train and being like, wow, we've really got to add this because users are demanding it, that's when we'll know that it's catching on in the broader ecosystem once they can't afford to ignore it, right?
Yeah, so I think cash tokens, the upgrade is like the biggest thing that happened to happen to BCH. Like it's way bigger than all past upgrades, but as you said, it like builds upon them. So first you had like the Oracle stuff, the data signature verify, and then some of the native introspection and some of the changes with how large integers can be. But those were all boring changes for most users. But now it will all come together and like really enable complex decentralized applications. For example, a kind of Uniswap. It will take a long time to develop, but now you could build it on BCH with cash tokens. And totally it wasn't possible before. So I think if BCH wouldn't have gotten cash tokens and like innovation just stopped, then I would also have lost excitement because there isn't that much that you can build. Like it still has a lot of common DNA with Litecoin and with Dogecoin. So they are all from the same Bitcoin family. So I really think that innovation that cash tokens brought is like so key for BCH's success. So we can just keep on trying the same things, then you will get the same results as before. So just only trying like retail adoption or you have all the volatility problems. So I really think Ethereum has shown that with DeFi and real applications, you can get way further. So like Bitcoin was born into the #1 spot, but Ethereum had to earn the #2 spot. And maybe, in my estimation, they will even flip in a few years. So I really think Ethereum has found use cases, whereas Bitcoin has like lost a lot of them. Like the biggest use case on Bitcoin right now is spamming with ordinals, like video games, Doom, that you can play on a blockchain. That's not a real use case to me. So so that's why I think cash tokens is that big.
That's right. And like you said, I love how you said that ETH had to earn the #2 spot. Yeah, yes and no. I mean, they are, I guess so, yes. Like even at the time when they were coming up, there was not the kind of competition or variety of coins that there was today. So they did have a bit of that sort of first mover advantage. Like BCH doesn't have that in the sense that it split off in 2017, right? So by the time it was already full ICO mania and the community had to kind of reorganize while all that was already going on. So I think we have to certainly earn our way back up to the top. But I think it's going to be sort of an unstoppable rise once it kicks in. I don't know when that's going to be, in 2 years or in 5 years. I don't know at what point the snowball hits critical mass, but it will be, because like you said, BCH was at #3 when it first split off and it had that spike. Like, is there any doubt in anybody's mind that if BCH was #3 at any point in the future, if it got to #3, it would be going to #1, surely, right? If it was #3, it would be the biggest story in crypto, full time, like 24/7. The comeback is on. Bitcoin Cash back from the dead. Like, what's going on? Like, how much innovation and momentum and excitement we would need to have to even get to #3. Like, people would just be flooding on board to join, right?
Yeah, I hope we get to see it. It will still be a few years at least.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. I mean, I can just see it as an incremental thing, right? If we get back in the top 20, that'll be like a bit exciting for everybody who's on the ground, right? People will be like, wow, it's really working. Like we're doing some good stuff here. And then if we get, back in the top 15, it'll be like, oh, pretty good. Get back in the top 10, the fire will really be burning. And then top 5, it'll be like the flippening is happening, right? So anyway, we'll see.
But I think now is the first time that I can really seriously talk about this, because I always thought, you can make a comeback that big, like it's just not going to happen. But now it's cash tokens. Like, I think it's really a huge upgrade. So all the stuff it enables, from sidechains to prediction markets to like the DAOs or the Uniswap style decentralized exchanges we mentioned. there's so many new use cases that all were impossible before. Like if there was no, and it also depended just on a few people. Like there was of course group before, and then a few token implementations before that all led up to this point. So there was a like continuous process. But also it depended on like a very few people to actually make the spec and all that happen, because it requires a unique set of skills and technical knowledge and foresight also, because you have to imagine what decentralized applications will look like. But of course there are no these applications yet. So.
Well, like some of them there are in the sense, and that's why it's interesting as well, because this will make BCH truly unique as well too, because it's combining the whole UTXO part. Somebody was asking about this on Twitter today. I'm going to have to write up a good summary and explain that to everybody. But for the listeners, you can. It's more complicated than this, but you can roughly think of cryptocurrencies as being in two camps, right? One is the account model, which is like what Ethereum has, and most of the other ones that are EVM chains. Not all of them, but most of them are like. And then the other one is the UTXO model, which is the classic Bitcoin accounting model. And I will need to workshop a bit the best way to explain this to people, but one way that I have been doing it is it's like if you have a lot of workers in a factory and they're making like kits, like think of, Lego kits or something, which are the transactions, right, that are being processed. So in the EVM model, it's like you have, 10 people in your factory and they just put all the Lego pieces into one bin, one big box that everybody goes to the box. Like when you're a kid, when I used to make Lego with my cousins, that was how we did it. Like all the Legos just in one box. So then you're like, where's this piece and where's that piece? And you're looking through these huge boxes to try and find it, or somebody's already using it in their project. So you're kind of salty about it, right? So that starts off good. If you've got 10 people and just a few bits of Lego, then it all is nice and easy. Everybody just throws it in one box. Everyone knows where everything is, right? But then once you get to 10,000 or 100,000 people, which is, as the transaction volume is increasing on an EVM account-based chain, that's how things get. It gets messy because everybody's trying to use the same box, and that's why the fees are high, right? But then in Bitcoin, it's like if everybody has their own kit, everybody gets their little Lego kit and it has the pieces they need for their kit, and that's it. Well, at the start, that sucks because, this guy's got that thing and that's not in my kit. I want to use that, but it's not there, right?
Yeah,
it's a huge pain. So you're kind of, in a bit of a pain in the ass. And if you want to swap bits with him, then you're going to have to coordinate. You're going to have to say, well, you give me this and I'll give you that. And in return, however we'll do it, let's make a deal, something like that. So it's much slower to get off the ground from that small technical base. But the plus side is once you've done the work, if you're getting up to 10,000 people, well, it's all just flowing really smoothly because everybody's got their kit, everybody builds their kit, boom, done. There's no gigantic mess forming at the shared box with everybody's Lego pieces and coordination issues, which is what you hear about MEV and all that, right? That's what that is. So I think BCH, this is all to say, will be the UTXO chain that has the scripting power to do all the things that Ethereum is doing, like DeFi stuff, the lending protocols, what are they called? DEXs, AMMs, like all that stuff, right? So that's kind of why it's so exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I like the analogy of the Lego kits.
I'm gonna have to refine that and use it as my pitch, but in trying to explain to people,
I also love the blog post by Jason Dreisner, which explains cash tokens because it really emphasizes the scalability, because it does not change the properties of the blockchain in the way that it would works in scalability. Like the properties are still the same, whereas with Ethereum they have a lot of scalability problems because they are not like parallel or parallelly validated. So it's a technical point, but like really important for what you mentioned with the Lego kits. Like if you have where we want to get like with like Visa level transactions per second, this is really important. And Ethereum is like trying sharding on all these complex solutions. And I think it's really good that UTXO also has a serious competitor that can also do all the smart contract stuff, but then still has the scalability of Bitcoin. because this is a huge misunderstanding that Bitcoin is actually very scalable. So of course there are a lot of problems with the software that don't take full advantage of this. But overall, the architecture is very scalable. So then to see that Bitcoin limited its block size to 1 megabyte, something ridiculous, it hurts so much because the properties of the system are so good in compared to Ethereum.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest misunderstandings. It's something we're going to have to fight through a lot. So that's why I'm trying to, come up with these ways we can explain it, because I think firstly, there was obviously a lot of lies about how Bitcoin was not scalable. That was all the block size war and all that. And then separately to that, you had this kind of separate story where Ethereum went off and did it a bit their own way, but then now they've run into scaling problems. So now a lot of people have got the sort of false impression that, well, as soon as you start kicking off, that's when you run into the scaling problems, right? Because that's what's happened in both instances so far. And they can't really see the forest for the trees, in the sense that no, Bitcoin and Ethereum are, yes, they're both having scaling problems and at about the same point in their development, but they were for completely different reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
The BTC one was a social and a political problem, and the Ethereum one was for a technical
design reasons. Yeah, because of the account model.
That's right. And so if they had, and then it kind of gets into, but then people always have questions like, well, why did Vitalik do that? Why did he make the account model if it was going to have all these problems? And it's, the answer really is that Vitalik is not Satoshi. I mean, he's a good engineer and all that, but certainly when he was 17 or 18 years old and dreaming up Ethereum for the first time, he did what any engineer would do, and he made the sort of simple, quick win, right?
I think he made a trade-off, right? So he saw the advantages of the global state model and said, we're willing to take the trade-off. And then they found a bunch of cool use cases that had never been done before. But then eventually they ran into what everybody could have foreseen, these scalability issues. Now it's time to try the local state model. So I heard people call it smart transactions. So kind of like that catchy term for our new cash tokens implementation. So smart transactions. And it's different from global state, right? Because as you explained, you can't read from any contract state in the whole blockchain. You really need to keep it all contained in your transaction. But then you can use inputs like Jason called it public interfaces. So you can have inputs that can be read by other transactions. And this way you can include state from other Lego kits. So this way you can combine them. It's a bit more difficult first to wrap your head around, but it's way more scalable. So that's another set of trade-offs.
Yeah, that's right. And I think this idea about smart transactions, I think it was Max Hastings was the first one I saw say that. Maybe someone said that before, but I'm going to give him the credit for at least popularizing it, if not coining it. I think that's brilliant, because that's if we're coming up with our own lingo, that's sort of a secondary effect of leading the pack technologically, right? As soon as you are advancing ahead of everything else, well, now you need new words to describe. We've seen that over and over, right? Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, ICOs, exactly, DeFi, AMMs, all these stuff comes into, even to a certain extent, I guess custody was a thing technically before cryptocurrency existed, and technically so was also decentralization. They were concepts before crypto, but crypto has really brought those kind of things to the fore, right? And hodling, all these things, a community that is on the forefront of culture will develop its own language and terminology that then everybody else has to catch up to. So I think in smart transactions, that's brilliant. If BCH is, producing those kind of things, I think it's a perfect thing, because it's like smart contracts, but it's the UTXO version, and it's sort of combines those two. So I think, okay, this is like smart contracts, but kind of a bit different. And then they're interested, what's different, what's the same, and then we go into all this that we've just been talking about. So I'm super thrilled, and I hope that catches on. And I highly encourage everyone to talk about BCH with smart transactions, right? Okay, all right, cool. So we've got a bit of a screenshot here as well too, Jett. Hopefully you can show the listeners of your web wallet that we've got here with uploading the images. I had a bit of a play around with it in terms of, creating a token, sending and receiving a couple things. That was all super cool. I've got to mention for emergent reasons, I know he'll want me to say that cash tokens kind of comes in at sort of two layers. So the first layer is tokens like that people would expect, which is non-fungible tokens, NFTs, you know, monkey pictures, and fungible tokens like you know, Bitcoin Cash, right? It's just a pool of things, and you can trade them in any amounts like we already have. So that's one layer of it, and then there's sort of a second layer, which we're going to need much more powerful wallets to unlock in the future. Like, this is already a big upgrade, this upgrade that we're doing now, but the even more powerful layer will be with transaction templates, so that you can do things like have your wallet automatically negotiate a contract for an AnyHedge stablecoin derivative over a period of time, which you're then using as a loan into another, you know, application. You know, something more complicated like that is all, the power is all in there, but we're not going to get it quickly because obviously we've got to build all the simple stuff first, and people have also got to catch up to the
so exactly.
concepts, right?
I built the simple stuff first. So what you can see is like the regular tokens and regular NFTs, and some of them have metadata. So and as you can see, some have like a green check and some have a red warning. So this just means because metadata is not included on the blockchain, so you always need to worry about imposter tokens, so which have the same metadata but are not actually what you think they are. So anybody can claim to be USDT, but of course there is only one real tether on any blockchain. So the verified check is what included on some trusted token lists. So metadata always has to be on token lists. So and some of these token lists will, for example, be provided by CoinMarketCap. So there will be no doubt what the real tether on cash tokens is, for example. But then if you want to deploy your own token, then and you haven't been included on any token list, you will still get this unverified symbol. And this is okay for any like small project, but big projects will probably want to be verified at least on some token lists or some listed wallets use. So people know for sure they are getting the real NFT or the real token and not just some cheap copy with a different token ID. Yeah, so that's one thing about metadata that I wanted to mention. And for the rest, I think it's pretty clear what is going on here. One thing I added recently was there's test NFTs at the bottom. So, and they're all stacked together. So it displays the logo of the group. For example, if you have Bored Apes, for example, it would display the general Bored Apes logo, and then you can press the expand button or the drop-down menu, and then all your different NFTs from that collection will be listed. So, I think that's a good feature to have, and it was also widely requested already by people experimenting on Chiplet.
Yeah, I'm really excited for a lot of this NFT stuff as well to come to BCH, because like we were saying before about, okay, BCH has got a very strong technical community, but the promotion and marketing parts are just, you know, they're improving. Like we were talking to B-Chad last episode about that. Obviously, we're doing this podcast, you know, there's more Twitter spaces going on. This kind of stuff is in the mix. But it would be amazing if we had a few more sort of creative types in terms of, you know, all the generative art that people are doing now, all that, like the sort of more visual thinkers, obviously music, stuff like that. And I think that's what this is going to bring a lot into the ecosystem. Certainly it seems to in every other coin. So I'm really excited that we're expanding into that separate part. On the next slide here, we've got these, the Paytaca CashTokens demo that you mentioned, and they also seem to be thinking along those same lines because they've built straight into it the ability to have the NFT like images show up directly in the wallet and a very sort of MetaMask signing flow, right?
Yeah, they are trying to integrate more the other layer already. So you mentioned there's two layers, like the basic cash tokens and then like more complex stuff, and they're trying to the more complex stuff. So it's something MetaMask-like, where you have a browser extension and it can interact with like any website that supports it. So they tried a smart transaction then to mint NFTs. So it's a smart contract that pay to script hash, And then it has a maximum amount. So I think it uses cash crypt under the hood to limit the amount of NFTs that can be minted. And I also reached out to them and asked about these pictures, if they already implemented the metadata standard, but apparently this was just for demo purposes. So it's still a work in progress, but I think it's really cool to have like a MetaMask equivalent in BCH because, a few years ago there was Badger Wallet, but I think those guys like really overhyped and under-delivered. So yeah, they got the SLP stuff working smoothly, but none of the like smart contract stuff you can do with MetaMask. And it looks like Paytaca is like exploring that around much more to do on-site transactions and communicate from the browser extension to the website. So I think they are really making good strides, and shout out to them because I'm interested to see what they will have ready by the mainnet launch. So maybe some project will use this NFT minting with a smart contract. Who knows?
Yeah, I think Paytaca have been absolutely crushing it, and I second that. I've given them a couple shout outs on the show before, and this is another good time for that, for people to go and check out a lot of what they're doing, because I think it's kind of a nice synergy of everything coming together. A lot of their stuff gets funded on Flipstarter, right? And if you contrast that to, the bitcoin.com, like they're going off in their separate direction. So it's really nice that the BCH community has been able to do like a Flipstarter to support this wallet. They operate in the Philippines, which is a relatively inexpensive location. So they posted up a photo of their team. They have so many people and stuff. It's ridiculous. They have like 30 people or something. It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was really funny too.
They've got marketing people, and they've got, the admin and the sales and the devs and the artists and what they're doing. Like, it's amazing actually what a strong little economy they had going just there. It's sort of starting to sprout up, right? Mm-hmm. So I think they're doing absolutely amazing. And if we can keep that going, then as they're improving and implementing this stuff that's more kind of on the cutting edge, also they have the AnyHedge direct integration, for instance, then that will draw more market share into them, because BCH users that want to try the latest features, there's switching costs. When you have an existing wallet, you think, okay, it's good enough for the time being. You're maybe a little bit unhappy, or you're kind of salty about something, but to switch, you have to have a really good reason to switch. And something like this will get them a lot of extra traction if they're there with the most cutting advanced features. And then that sort of self-reinforces, right? Then they'll get even more excited because their user numbers will be growing, and it's just going to be great. So I think they're doing amazing stuff at Paytaca, and I want to give them a lot of props.
Yeah, and it's also a good use case of a smart contract. So or smart transactions, because these, of course, you can do like a centralized mint where you mint all the NFTs at once and then starting to sell them. There's like a more trusted setup, because you have to like trust the site where you are buying from, that they will actually send you the NFT at sale. But with the smart contract, it's like all trustless, because you get the smart contracts can steal from you, right? Maybe in Ethereum they can, but with these simple type smart contracts, you will be receiving the NFT when you send it Bitcoin Cash. So I think that's a great use case. It's similar to ICO. So I think once it's working for NFTs to do like a mint with the interaction to a contract, and it's also easy to do like ICOs. And because those were so popular on Ethereum, they will probably also see some use cases or some use on Bitcoin Cash. And then I think a bit more advanced would be like token marketplaces that are all non-custodial, so that you can lock up some of your tokens and say, I want this much Bitcoin Cash for it. And then you can take these tokens out of the contract, and or the reverse, that you are either buying or selling. So both would work. Because SLP had a problem where you couldn't like trustlessly buy SLP tokens with the smart contract, because the smart contract can't know what is a valid SLP token and what is not. So this was like a huge pain point for SLP, and it is trivially solved with cash tokens. So of course the blockchain knows what is a valid cash token, because you can't like fake it. It's all native tokens. So I think it's a very big advantage, and also one of the first smart contracts we'll probably see on take off on Bitcoin Cash.
So can you just clarify for me there. I mean, I think I already know the answer, but just to get your take on it, you were saying before about having the unverified tokens, right, with the red X, but then you're saying, oh, but the blockchain already knows you can't fake the cash tokens. Can you just dig into it and explain that a little bit more?
So of course, for the metadata is still on trusted token lists and so you still have that part is not fully trustless, because how can the blockchain know what is the real tether? Like, it doesn't know and it can't know. So that's like formed by social consensus. So what does the tether website say is the real tether, or what is the team issuing? And that's all outside the blockchain. So for any standard, the metadata is always like a bit trusted, but then the trustless part is like the token sale on chain. So if you are verified that a certain token ID is tether, then you can, for example, swap your tethers for Bitcoin Cash or the reverse trustlessly with a smart contract. So then you don't need an exchange. And these are like the easiest swaps to do, is just non-custodial peer-to-peer, and then AMM style DEXs like JetX, like Uniswap. They will come way later, I think, because they are I took a look at what the work Jason did on JetX, and they involve like 10 different contracts or different types of tokens to all keep track of state. So all that stuff is like really on another level. So I don't think we'll see that anytime soon. But a peer-to-peer like token marketplace, non-custodial, with something like Paytaca, that'd probably be realistic to still develop it in a few months or later this year. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to clarify that, I mean, so the way I understand it is, so with the tokens, you can have the tokens being transferred around on the blockchain, and there's no way to fraud that because the miners and the nodes are already checking it. So if Jett says he's going to send me, 50 Jett tokens, then once I know what the Jett tokens are, somebody else can't send me, Jett tokens, but they changed one of the numbers, and suddenly I'm like, oh, it's all, my wallet has just grouped them all together. No, it's never going to do that. But you do have to have this metadata, which is separate from the actual, because the tokens on the chain are just a string of numbers, right? It's just a hash of this is what the info, this is what the token ID is, and anybody can make a token. So there's nowhere that there's no office, Bitcoin Cash office, that you write in and say, hey, I'm Tether and I want to register my official Tether tokens, right? So in order to solve the disparity between those two things, that your wallet can't be fooled, but on the other hand, anybody can just make any token, then there will be lists of metadata which will be maintained. Well, I mean, we'll see. Anybody can do it. So probably the Bitcoin Cash podcast, I've considered we might end up running a server that provides some of this information, but I'm sure major exchanges will do it. Maybe price aggregators like CoinMarketCap, maybe other, maybe the node teams might do it as well too, will provide those lists so that you can just say, okay, the top, 100 tokens that everybody's going to want to know about, like USDT and
this will be uncontroversial, right? Everybody will agree what the real USDT is.
Exactly. Yeah, and then
you'll
get lists, and then those lists you'll be able to combine them together, and so there's no way you're going to be missing any of the main ones. And if somebody is sending you, hey man, I'm going to send you this token, if it's not on those lists, probably you want to be a bit aware.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
what's going on here, right?
Because he might have called his own token like the real Tether, something.
The real Dogecoin, the real Slim Shady. Somebody's going to make that token. So it'll all work out, but all of this surrounding infrastructure that kind of needs to be built and will come along with it. There's going to be a bit of tech going on in the background. That's another reason to not be expecting it to just instantly pop off on day one. But on the other hand, the way I tend to think of it more is that all this extra work and stuff, it's not a problem so much as it's an opportunity, because it's a barrier to anyone who wants to compete with us. Essentially, is they also have to go through all these steps, and we're not doing it for nothing. It's because it's hard stuff but powerful, right? So I'm not too worried about other teams creeping up on us in that respect. Right, let's chat a bit about BCH discussion then. So I mentioned at the start of the show that you're the moderator at the main BCH Telegram BCH channel, I think it's technically called. People can check that out at t.me/BCH channel. It has about 2,500 members, seems to fluctuate a bit as people kind of come and go, or you delete some bots or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But can you tell us the story of that, how you became moderating there and how you sort of operate that?
Yeah, so I think something they say is it's good to have someone who doesn't want that power. So I didn't really want to be the main moderator of the channel, but I ended up like inheriting it from someone else for a few years now. And I think we ran it pretty well. But one thing you learn is that absolute free speech on this platform, that you just need some moderation, especially on a platform like Telegram, because someone can easily like spam with noise. So we try to keep the signal to noise ratio very good in the channel, and people can discuss like whatever. Sometimes they go really off topic into some stuff, but then as moderators, we try to remind them sometimes from let's keep it to Bitcoin Cash. You can form your own group if you want to talk like politics or something, or just talk about other coins. That's fine too, or just to only talk about the price all the time. So that's fine, but you should probably go to a different channel for that. So I'm pretty active in that group myself. But there's a whole bunch of other moderators, so I don't try to read every message because it's a lot of distraction.
The dictator.
What I think is a better use of my time, I also post frequently on iBTC, on the Bitcoin Cash subreddits. So both iBTC and iBitcoin Cash, and because I think that's better signal to noise. You just make one post, and people who find it interesting can comment. Because sometimes in Telegram things get buried, so people who are interested can find the important info. So I think for Telegram, it's good that we also have news channels. So if you just want the Bitcoin Cash news, then you should subscribe to those. And the Bitcoin Cash channel is like the ideal place to ask questions or do some discussion. But if you want a highest signal to noise ratio, then probably like Telegram groups are not the ideal place. But I think we run it pretty well. We can, of course, we should be ambitious and try to grow it a lot more. But
I think it's just important to bring up. So I've got a shout out. So I've started a new subreddit /r/Bitcoin Cash podcast. So if I have any keen Redditors listening, you can check that out. And also /r/CashTokens, which Fiendish Crypto has started. And I also, responsible disclosure, am now a moderator of. Mm-hmm. And the reason for starting those up, I think, was because, especially on our BTC, but maybe also on the Telegram group, some people were kind of getting a bit frustrated that maybe there was a bit too much free speech. Not that the BCH community should be against free speech or anything like that, but when things are consistently getting sidetracked, and particularly our BTC, there's so much history and I think
it's a good place. Just if people want to learn specifically about cash tokens, they can just check out the cash tokens subreddit, and then they will get the highest signal to noise ratio. So it's smart, but also it's hard to get people to join a new subreddit. So I think it's a good effort from his part, and we'll see how it develops.
Yeah, so there's kind of a bit of a catch-22 there, because the large places to discuss are the ones with the network effect, and it's where everybody goes. Yeah. But on the other hand, then if you want to sort of change the vibe or have a more specific focus, then you've kind of got to start from scratch again. So I think that's what's kind of going there, and I like that the community discussion is sort of decentralizing in that way. I think it's really healthy, and I think people will find their way into the spaces that have the moderation policies that sort of suit them, or the interests that suit them, in the same way as, like, I'm, on my subreddit, I'm going to be more lax about, like, if people are pumping the price or they want to talk about trading or something like that, I'm going to be more open to that. In RBTC, there's certainly a point at which the mods are going to come in and say, what are you doing? I would too, but, they might have a different stance. And then the same with the cash tokens subreddit, probably, if you're in there talking about gambling on various coins, I think Fiendish is probably going to shut you out pretty quick. So just to all the listeners, if you are a keen Redditor, and certainly we have a lot of people I know that are always browsing on RBTC, then just check out the Bitcoin Cash podcast subreddit, and also Cash Tokens subreddits. Obviously, we'll have links in the description, same as always, because I'm really trying to get some traction going on those. Do you have any other thoughts about the things people might want to know or might not consider from your view of moderating the channel? Like sometimes, obviously, users can be a bit upset sometimes that, oh, this certain discussion is not being allowed, or, oh, we need to discuss more about this. Or I see a lot of people, they get like if people get banned or silenced for 7 days, then they think the mod has a vendetta against them, and so then when their 7-day suspension or whatever, they come back in and they say, "Oh, it's this same mod. He's after me again." Like,
yeah, I'd say it's a pretty thankless job, but yeah, I'm not. I'm the admin, but I'm not like moderating every message or. Because, as I said, I'm trying to focus on the building software, and like the price and the Telegram discussions. They often serve to be a distraction. So.
Yes. Okay, fair enough.
But sometimes I get pinged from people like, this guy is being annoying for like the whole week in the chat. So maybe we should at least reach out, or should consider being a bit more strict on the policy. And so sometimes something is brought up if there's like a real problem, but most of the time it's smooth sailing.
That's good. That's good to hear. And I like, one thing I really noticed when I got back involved in BCH was that some of that stuff like RBDC or even on Twitter, where it's a bit more public, a lot of the community had sort of shrunk back from that, and they'd found their way into things like Telegram that were a bit more cloistered off. And the reason was because there was just so much toxicity and people complaining and blah, 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 like so many laser eyes, complaining and you're a scam and all this stuff. Like under those pressurized conditions, everybody had to take a more defensive approach and find sort of the good actors in a place that was like higher proof of work to get into. You had to know where you were going to find it. And I think we need to, now that we're lucky, we're in a good place where everybody's mostly happy and on the same page, we need to be conscious of opening that back up and trying to get out of those same Telegram groups, because that's not going to support, 1 million people are not going to join that Telegram channel. And if they do, then there'll be a mess of nobody will be able to understand what's even going on in there. So.
Yeah, I'd love for more people, for example, to create YouTube videos and stuff, because currently there's not that much going on, but it's combined. It's like chicken and egg. We probably want more applications, and then people will talk about it. If people like to talk about applications and not like the blockchain layer innovation. So that will probably improve over the coming months.
Yeah, I agree. As we can see, and probably part of the best things we can do is obviously we need people coming up like this channel, who are making Bitcoin Cash specific content, but really we need to get something exciting enough that all the sort of generic crypto people are kind of like, wow, let's do a feature on Bitcoin Cash because we haven't checked in with them in a while and it's kicking off, right? So I think that's when we'll really know we're working, is if the channels of 10,000 people or 5,000 people or whatever, the smaller kind of YouTube channels that just track the price and talk about different cryptos, if they start saying, oh, BCH is looking good, then they're kind of promoting, amplifying our signal for free and also to new audiences. So to me, that will be one massive sign of if we're starting to break through in terms of that development, I'd say. All right, I wanted to talk a bit about this dystopian banking advances. I saw this comment from Dr. Simon Godek. Shout out to Chris Troutner, as it was his thread that got me onto this. And this guy, Simon Godek, posted, my Brazilian bank at C6 Bank is now tracking my CO2 emissions from purchases, travel, etc., and strongly encouraging me to compensate monetarily for them. I predicted this development 2 years ago, and now it seems to be slowly coming true. Welcome to the dystopian world we live in. I really wanted to just bring this up and get your thoughts, and also maybe Jett's thoughts, and obviously also the listeners, you can think through this issue a bit, is that this has been something that has been embedded into crypto ever since it was created really with the financial crisis, like control your own money, censorship free, no authorities, like that kind of stuff is sort of built in. No agenda either. It sort of is a bit, freedom inspiring by default. But the whole point about the freedom is if you don't want to use it, you can just not use it, or there's not extra restrictions. And so a lot of people have been saying for a long time, look, the banking system is going to start really trying to crack down and control what you're doing, who you can send your money to. Obviously, with the coronavirus stuff, we saw the Canadian truckers, right? They were getting censored, and things get into politics and things get messy, and the sort of the control grid sneaks in there. And what a lot of people, I'm sure, would have just said, oh, no, that's just conspiracy theories, or that doesn't apply to me, or that doesn't matter. Maybe we're starting to see that encroachment expand to the point that it is going to start impacting just people who are unaware and just, I'm just happily using my bank. And then suddenly it says, you've done too many CO2 emissions this month. You can't buy another, steak dinner. Like, you just shut off or something like that, right? We're getting very close to that line, which 10 years ago or 5 years ago, probably a lot of people would have thought was ridiculous. Do you see this happening? And what do you make of all this?
Yeah, so it's a bit weird that the Brazilian bank is saying it. I wonder how many people are actually voluntarily paying for their carbon emissions to who? To the bank or to some green organization? So first of all, I don't think this will have any success at all. But yeah, of course, if they become more forceful about it, like as you said, placing limits on CO2 emissions, or like hindering payments, then that would be like a very bigger deal. I think, the widespread censorship or also the privacy implications, because they know everything you're buying to make this like CO2 overview. So yeah, that's probably not something everybody's comfortable with, that your bank like being so with their noses into your personal stuff. But yeah, for example, with the Turkish, everything that's like slightly or like controversial, you can easily have your funds frozen, or controversial figures, they are locked out of their banks and just have to don't get access to the financial system anymore. They're like for wrong things, they just get blocked. So I think it's a real threat. They are not something that's easy to solve. So like, it's contributing to crypto, we're like doing our part, but it's a big problem, and for us, I think it will only become a bigger problem in the future. So not too hopeful, on that front either.
Jett, do you have any thoughts on this? One thing that I certainly think about, in hindsight, was we didn't get way into it. This is not a political show; it's a BCH show. But obviously, technology and money and Bitcoin particularly is quite a political thing. And I think back to some of those episodes we did during the lockdowns, and we had some chat in some of them about the truckers, and we like I'm saying, we didn't go too ham on it. Didn't turn all into the political thing, but I think we made our sort of opinion fairly clear, and I think that's probably held up amazingly well in hindsight. Like, I think anybody looking back at those episodes at that time would be like, wow, that was pretty reasonable, or got it pretty spot on. I think at the time, certainly maybe not some of our listeners, because they would be attracted to this content to begin with, but would some people in the world might listen to that and think, that was a bit much, or this is a bit weird, or whatever. But in hindsight, I think kind of the angle we were on was clear, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I think Canada is not in a good position. Like, the people here are incredibly passive, and unless something happens overnight, people don't notice. So as far as like carbon offsets and taxes and all that stuff goes, there's already like laws in motion to do carbon offset and taxing and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure also when I flew with Air Canada they would tell me this is your carbon emissions, and if you want, you could like donate X amount of money to a charity specifically for reducing some of those carbon emissions. I don't mind if it's suggestions. I will mind when they start screwing with my transactions. If they say this is too much and so we've restricted your ability to spend your money, I'm not going to deal with a bank anymore. And I'm not too particularly concerned about the ramifications and inconveniences in my daily life. I'll find alternatives. But yeah, I can see this very much being a real thing here in the next 5 years max.
Yeah, amen to that. You can find alternatives if you're looking.
Yeah. My one concern is that most people won't look for alternatives. They'll just suck it up and go with it.
Yeah, well, I just think, again, I don't want to get, too deep on this really, but the whole element with the sort of the vaccines, and there was, it was getting pretty scary there for a while, right? Things have retreated. It seems like things got past a bit of a tipping point and society kind of walked it back, right? Things went on long enough. There was enough pressure and so on that people thought, okay, that was a bit much. Sort of common sense returned and sort of took hold at a certain point, right? But at least for me, certainly the whole thing was a pretty scary kind of run-in. And I think it's part of a broader trend. And so when people are, I think it's very easy for people who weren't perhaps as worried or as vigilant or as maybe impacted. Maybe they made different personal choices. Maybe they were living in another part of the world. Everybody's in a different situation, than I was, right? If they were a bit less impacted by that, it's kind of easy to go, yeah, it wasn't that bad, like in hindsight, because just as the screws were really starting to turn, it got backed off, right? And that's how you push a population. You push them to the point that they're at like breaking point, then you ease off a bit, but not back to where you started, just a little bit back, and people are a bit more conditioned to that, right? And certainly there's an element of the crypto movement that is kind of like, we're on a clock here. We got to get traction. We got to get it happening because the government is slow and incompetent, but they got a lot of money. They've got unlimited money and they get there in the end. So if we're not on the front foot and not getting people into, crypto and, it's just an eternal battle really for, freedom and privacy and people's human rights, then slowly but surely CBDCs are going to roll out and the controls are going to increase, right?
I saw when all the COVID stuff first hit, I saw what I'll consider a conspiracy theory because it at the time seemed so like speculative, like there was no evidence for it. And it was just that these lockdowns, specifically the lockdowns and the push or the mandates for vaccines, weren't about, public safety, but just to test the population to see how far they'll do whatever they're being told. That has me like very concerned. This is just their testing bed. Like, what if they'd rerun the experiment in 5 years? They know what to do differently. And I think over the past probably like 3 months, I've really been focused on, okay, if I were to buy a piece of land, just undeveloped land, which country in the world would be best suited for that? And Canada's completely off the list. There's some beautiful nature here. And I would love to find a nice like piece of farmland and settle down on, but I wouldn't trust that at no point in my life I wouldn't be visited by some government agent being like, I don't think we're at that wrong think yet. I think it's all still wrong speech. But yeah, I wouldn't put it past them to come to my door one day and be like, we know you've been thinking these things. Time to go. I don't want to get stuck in Canada as a criminal, that's for sure. I don't think I've ever done anything wrong in my life. So, well, I don't think I've ever...
By your own standards.
Yeah.
That's the point. Legality, morality, it's all a bit of a gray area. It's all a bit subjective once you get into it. But
I don't think I've ever caused...
Your conscience isn't onto you.
I don't think I've ever caused direct physical harm or loss. So I've never stolen and I've never been violent towards anyone. And I think, those two things... I should be allowed to go somewhere if I want to go somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Matthew, any thoughts on any of this to the extent, again, it's not a political show, but I think it's important that we keep this theme running in the discussion.
Yeah. So I think it's very important to be like liberty minded, especially with Canada is a good example. Australia was also a good example during the hysteria of COVID. Just happy, just happy that I want to say that I'm not at those places, but that would be a little cruel. So I hope they change their directions and they will become more skeptical of their government. I guess that's how I would put it.
Yeah. I mean, my observation was, I know probably Bitcoin Jason and some of the other Bitcoin Cash city people in Townsville will be listening. And when I visited there and talked about this a little bit, I wasn't there kind of for long enough to get really deep on all of it, but I sort of got the impression that the degree to which the sort of controls were imposed and stuff in Australia prompted a sort of a severe response or a severe wake-up call, you might say, for a small section of the population. And then a lot of people stayed very apathetic, right? So it wasn't like, the average person got 10% more concerned about government interference in their life or something. No, it was like some people got 100% more concerned and some people didn't get any more concerned at all, right? They just thought, okay, well, this is just necessary, or it was just a temporary thing or whatever. So I don't know. It's not necessarily a good thing. I'm not I'm actually concerned about that in itself. Anything that is creating polarized minorities in society is generally for the worse, I would expect. But, on the other hand, if you're not having those conversations, or if the people who are worried they're responding to something, they're not just, inventing this, like they're responding to what's happening in the world, and there's always reasons for that. I just think, that's something everybody can keep in mind. Anyway, we don't need to go into it any more than that, but I think it's important to touch on, because I saw this come across my feed now, and to the extent that this is, Crypto Anarchist Bitcoin Cash podcast, we got to keep abreast of those kind of changes. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of it with the CBDCs. All right, on a completely different note, I've got stat of the week here, which is that Bitcoin BTC today, about an hour and a half before this show started, produced a 24.99 kilobyte block of 71 transactions and $115 of fees with an empty mempool. And I was just watching the, blockchain stats as I'm wont to do. I saw this come up. I thought we have to talk about this on the show. This is crazy. A couple of weeks ago, we were doing the show about ordinals, and the BTC is getting a bit clogged up. Fees are rising. Maybe they're going to have a fee crisis. There was a lot of salt going on. Why are you guys spamming our blockchain? Oh no, I can't put through my BTC transaction. All of that was going on. And here we are, a month later, maybe a little more, and it's empty. It's crickets on the BTC chain. So the ordinals hype has kind of died down. And I think this is just a really critical thing to highlight, because people in the BTC chain, they might not realize how big of a problem this is, right? Because I think what happens is they get a surge of demand, like ordinals. Everybody gets really excited, sending it around. And the BTC people are like, oh, great, look, we've got loads of demand for our coin. It's really important. We're still the king. We're still number one. And then the ones who want to transact with it, if they haven't left already, start thinking, oh, but it's all right. This just happens. It's just having a busy period. It'll quiet down, right? And it has quietened down. So every time that happens, their level of panic, is mollified, and they think, yeah, so it's all fine, right? And so then they're just a frog in the boiling pot of water that the chain never scales. There's never any, desire from the user base. Like, we have to do something, because every time it starts turning into a crisis, people say, no, it's just FUD. You just wait for it to go away. And it does. But the unseen consequence is that people move on to other chains, which is what has happened here. And so the BTC chain can kind of stay the king, like it stays floating along at the top, but it's kind of slowly losing steam. I just thought this was a critical thing to make a point of. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this is news to me. I didn't know that the ordinals usage, or at least the general usage of the Bitcoin blockchain, has fallen off so much. But yeah, I think generally Bitcoin is in a very bad place. Because there's just no innovation going on, nothing to be excited about really. The only thing that I can see that would solve a lot of these, a lot of the problems with Bitcoin is if they really start adapting the drive chain concept to enable side chains, which are voted on by miners. It would be the only way I see Bitcoin still being in a good place for the future. But otherwise, if it's not for side chains, then I think Bitcoin is like completely lost. I don't see any hope in the advanced Lightning stuff with channel factories and watchtowers. And I think, unfortunate to say, but for those devs, but I think they're really wasting a lot of their efforts. And and I hope those resources get redirected, because it's really, in crypto, you see it a lot, misallocation of capital. I think EOS, like the ICO, they got like almost $1 billion in funding or something a crazy amount, and then you see what in Bitcoin Cash people have to work with. So it's like it's very strange to me why this is allocated in this way. Or for Bitcoin, I understand that there is a lot of resources going to stuff, even if it turns out in the end. It reminds me a bit of all the how is it called, the
Metaverse.
Yeah, metaverse. Now everyone is pivoting to AI, but
AI.
not too long ago, that was the big money hole, was like the metaverse stuff. And there's so many big companies pouring so much money into it. And like, for what? Was there even like one good thing that came out, like one product? It's so weird to me. Yeah, maybe because of my economics background, but to see, nobody can predict the future, but like to pour this much money into like so unproven technology with nothing to show for it in the end, I think it's pretty sad. If all those man hours and all those costs, all those money went into something else instead to make the world a better place, would have been better.
Yeah, economics is a very strange system in that way, where the free market is, like they said, in the short term, the stock market is a popularity contest, and in the long term, it's a weighing machine, right? That's kind of how it is. Everybody can just, and the amounts of money in some of this stuff is just ridiculous. It just goes to show that the people who've accumulated tons of capital, they've got some to burn, and who knows where it all goes, thrown away into this giant black hole, right? And I mean, it's funny because, like you say, there is a bit of a cyclical trend. So crypto, that was the hype thing. Then metaverse, that was the hype thing. Now AI, that's the hype thing. And in 6 months again, it's probably going to be crypto again. It'll be time for another bull run, right? So I think it's funny because a lot of people outside crypto say all this money goes into crypto, it's just wasted. That is true in some extent. There is a lot of scams and there is a lot of bullcrap. But on the other hand, what they don't see is that there's a big round of investment that comes in. 90% of it gets washed away or dies, but the 10% of it that's real carries through to the next bull run, and maybe like metaverses or VR or AI is all sort of similar to that, right? Where there's a lot of stuff that suddenly seems exciting, but it doesn't actually find that much of a real use case, or whatever money is propping it up kind of vanishes. But then when you find something later in a few years down the line, and you're suddenly like, oh wow, this thing that is actually useful, well, that came about from all the testing and iteration and all the failures that passed by the wayside on that front, right? So that's kind of how I see it. But I agree that it is pretty weird, and it is pretty funny that people get on such bad tangents with all of that. Okay, so speaking of getting on a bad tangent, we've got kind of a bit of a two-parter here. The first part is Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC. I should have told you before the stream, Jett. We're going to pull up this tweet. There's a little clip of him in, I don't know where he is, in some Congress or the House of Representatives or whatever, there's some committee, whatever's going on in America, being grilled by this Republican from North Carolina called Patrick McHenry, asking him whether or not Ethereum is a security, because there's been sort of indications from the SEC that Bitcoin is not a security, it's a commodity. Of course, that's the worst. It should have been a currency. If things had gone down differently, maybe it could have got into that category, but it didn't. Anyway, it's a commodity. But then this Ethereum stuff, nobody really knows whether it's a security or a commodity. And this one guy, Gary Gensler, whose job it is to decide which one it is, apparently he doesn't even know. So we're going to hear this clip. It's quite enlightening to listen to.
Well, thank you, Chair Gensler. I'll now recognize
Matthew,
myself.
we're not going to be able to hear it,
minutes.
so I'm just going to.
Ether is one of the
and you can listen
most
to
popular digital assets and
headphones.
powers the Ethereum blockchain. Back in 2018, then SEC Corporation Finance Director Bill Hinman stated that he believed Ether was not a security. Last month, CFTC Chair Benham expressed his view that Ether is a commodity. The State Attorney General of New York asserted in a court filing last month that Ether is a security. Clearly, an asset cannot be both a commodity and a security. Do you agree?
Actually, all securities are commodity under the Commodity and Exchange Act. It's that we are excluded commodities. But I would agree that a security cannot be also an excluded commodity and an included commodity. I'm sorry, Chair, just to talk about the Commodity Exchange Act more precisely.
Okay, so do you recognize, how would you categorize Ether then?
Look, I think that the general sweep of what Congress did, not just in the 30s, but as amended.
I'm asking you, sitting in your chair now, to make an assessment under the laws as exist. Is Ether a commodity or a security?
Without speaking to anyone.
I know you've repeatedly said you're not going to speak to one, except you've spoken to one, Bitcoin. So I'm asking you to speak to a second one, the second largest market cap here.
And speaking to the tokens, there's 10 to 12,000. If there's a group of entrepreneurs in the middle,
asking about
and
one.
The public is anticipating a profit based on the.
I'm asking a specific question, Chair Gensler. I said this in private. This should be no shock to you. I'm asking this question. Is Ether a commodity or a security?
And again, it depends on the facts and the law, and if there's a group of individuals.
I'm asking about the facts and the law sitting in your seat and the judgment you are making.
And so, Mr. Chair, I think you would not want me to prejudge, because I'm also.
But you have prejudged on this. You've taken 50 enforcement actions. We're finding out as we go, as you file suit, as people get Wells notices on what is a security in your view, in your agency's view. I'm asking you a very simple question about the second largest digital asset. What is your view?
And my view is if there's a group of individuals in the middle that the public is anticipating.
All right, so let me just ask a second question then. Do you think it serves the market for an object to be viewed by the commodities regulator as a commodity and the securities regulator to be viewed as a security? Do you think that provides safety and soundness for the product? Do you think it provides consumer protection? Do you think it serves the value of innovation? I think no should be a very simple answer for you here.
I think
that uncertainty is bad, is it not?
And I think that Congress has said that there's one agency, the Securities and Exchange Commission, under this committee.
And you won't answer my question, and you're the head of that agency. So give me a break. Come on.
I'm answering it in the generic because you would not want me to speak about any one set of facts and circumstance.
Okay, so, but you've already spoken. Have you said anything about Bitcoin?
My predecessors and the agency itself has spoken to them.
Okay, but you're not willing to do the same about Ether. Okay, so let me just step back. There's a lack of clarity here in the marketplace. Can you at least agree to that?
I think that the clarity is there. The law is clear.
All right.
There's a group
of individuals
who rely on
Let me be explicit about this. The market doesn't see it. Your regulatory actions and the CFTC's regulatory actions say that there's a great deal of uncertainty here. it is the intention of this committee to fix that uncertainty and actually provide a sound legal basis for this. So
That was very spicy.
Well, it's just ridiculous, right? This is just straight up bullshit. Whenever you see something like this, I sort of wonder how there are people who think, yeah, no, the government, that's a fair and reasonable like enterprise, because you just watch a clip like that and it's just rubbish. He's like, is it a commodity or security? He can't give him an answer. And he's trying to play all these sort of semantic games about, the law, and I don't want to make a decision because it's not entirely clear. It's like, you're the one who has the power to decide this, and you're deliberately not deciding. Why? Not because you don't know the answer, it's because you want to just be able to keep it vague, because as long as they can keep it nice and vague, well, then they can go around and just pull up whoever they want on and just as they go, just make it arbitrary. That's not how the law works. The law is not some arbitrary thing that you just get wrecked by undefined, unspecified laws in perpetuity because the regulators decide not to, give you any clarity. That's just complete bullshit. But that's what's happening, right? I don't know. What do you think? Do you to make you laugh at least, Matthew?
Yeah, this was a funny description. Indeed, you can get wrecked at any moment in perpetuity for something undecided. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. Are you certain that this is would it be even worse if it was just classified as a security, or do you think the current uncertainty is the worst outcome?
Well, I think probably. I sort of think that the current outcome is the worst.
Okay.
I just have that sense. I mean, it depends who for, really. Like, if you say this is all going on in the US, and so everybody outside the US is just going to keep powering on, that's the ultimate resiliency of crypto, decentralization, blah, 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 is just like, if they can't get their ducks in a row, then whatever companies or trade or whatever situation has to be worked out, whoever is involved will work it out. They'll move to a different country. They'll register somewhere else. They'll do whatever they have to do, right? So maybe they're just shooting themselves in the foot in America. But on the other hand, I feel like even if they gave an unfavorable ruling, like as far as I can tell, most crypto people sort of seem to hope that it would be a commodity or at least not a security. Even if they said that, well, then at least that would be established. And then the people who get involved in doing all this lobbying and stuff, people like Coinbase and whatever who are materially impacted, then they can say, this doesn't make sense because X, Y, or Z, right? Once somebody's taken a position, then you can argue against it. But while everything's still vague, then we're still stuck at this stage of just, can we get to the fucking step one?
Shredding exposition, both a security and a commodity at the same time.
Exactly. And it's just arbitrary. It's just so shocking to see. It's like the rule of law doesn't really mean very much if you just have arbitrary enforcement like this. It's just the basis of the entire system that everybody is agreeing to cooperate by, like, is so corrupt at this level. I don't know. Personally, I mean, a lot of people enjoyed this clip and they were all, it got shared around a lot. A lot of people, ha ha ha, this is like very funny. There is a comedic element to it, right? And I can certainly see the angle that, okay, it's comedic how incompetent all the government is. And I think there's also somewhere in here an empowering message about, you see, this is like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Why we can't waste time arguing with these people? It's pointless. Their whole game is to just gaslight you and just keep you in this endless cycle of bullshit. You just got to ignore that, forget it all,
it's
and
a real
just
skill.
crack on. Right?
A real skill how he manages to never answer the question.
That's right. Exactly. He's saying, like, I don't want to speak to this specific case. He's like, no, we're talking about this specific case. How many weasel words, like, how long could this go on for? And you can hear him getting a bit frustrated at how, like, ridiculous it is, right? So anyway, I think most listeners to this show will understand that is just complete bullshit. But I think it's important, that conversation is ongoing around the regulation and whatever, and people should be paying attention. And for anybody who is particularly American, I know we have a lot of American listeners when I look at the world map of where our downloads come from. you should be, paying attention to this in your local political environment if it influences, the way you vote, or, well, I guess I can't really tell you how to vote or what to take into consideration. But I think this is something definitely worth considering. And then we've got sort of a two-parter here, because the meme of the week is also on this. It's a meme about this. It's on this same topic. It's about Gary Gensler's decision-making process. It's going to be a little harder for the audio listeners to follow, but just bear with it. It's got an excellent soundtrack, and we'll sort of explain it a bit afterwards.
Gary, what? Whoa. It's time to decide on what's a security. Let's go.
One way or another, I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna take it. You one way or another, I'm gonna win you. I'm gonna get you. One way or another, I'm gonna see you. I'm gonna meet you one day.
Gary, don't you have a fat bag of algorithms?
I dumped that shit at the top, bro.
One way or another, I'm gonna find you.
That's a close one. What are we going to tell people?
I don't know. How about we let them figure it out? I love my job!
Right. So you have the clip there of this guy pretending to be the Honorable Gary Gensler and sort of in their office playing this, I don't know, stupid games like with a sort of darts and a, what do you call it, bow and arrow, plastic bow and arrow to decide what's a security and what isn't. So Dash was a security, that was a bullseye. And then the library, who've also been sued and all that, they were also a bullseye. Algorand, they were kind of a hit as well too. But then I just love the way he says with that accent, do you have a fat bag of Algorand? It's so funny. Oh man. And then they got onto Ethereum was the last one, and it kind of hit the edge, and so they were debating about that. But this is the comedy in this situation, right? You've got to laugh. I love that these guys just went out and just whipped this up in like a couple hours. Like, this is some strong meme production happening right here, I would say, right?
I think this comes from there's an Australian channel. The guy that runs it is Adrian Allenberg, I believe. And he did a meme that went viral like 5-10 years ago now. And it was like how Vice writes their articles. And it's just a dude who's sitting in an office thing like this. And some guy comes in and he's like, all right, we gotta whip out the next article. What are we going to do? And he just grabs like those like suction cup dildos, and he covers his eyes and just starts throwing it at a wall. And it's like ketamine, small village in Africa, violent gangs, and it's like, okay, the ketamine violent gangs from South Africa. I think that was the inspiration here. I got a lot of those vibes.
Right. Yeah. Well, it reminds me also of, South Park has that famous one where they cut the head off the chicken. Like, people repost that clip so much of whatever it is. The banks are melting down. Like, what are we going to do? And the regulator's like, we're going to cut the head off this chicken. And then it goes on this sort of game board and it gets onto bailout. And they're like, bailout. It's that exact same like thing happening. And it's just so ludicrous and arbitrary, the whole thing, that I think, sometimes comedy just cuts right to the heart of the truth, right? That's what comedy is about. So I don't know. Matthew, what did you think?
Yeah, I know the side by reference you're talking about. And yeah, sometimes it seems like it is actually how they make decisions. It's good. Indeed, I agree that it's good, well done from them to whip it up in a few hours after the real clip.
Yeah. And it just goes to show, how, I mean, who knows? Like, Gary Gensler is probably on the pay by somebody, in the anti-crypto lobby or whatever. There's obviously something going on, because if everybody was above board, he would just give an answer. And it's like, this is, and you know what really grinds my gears as well? We're having a lot of like Jeremy rants this episode, but that you then have people who are like complaining and bitching and moaning about, crypto, they're doing this, or the people are not following the rules or whatever. It's like, look, to the extent that we are trying to fucking meet you halfway, we're getting absolutely nothing. So you've kind of, created your own noose. If at a certain point crypto people are just like, fuck you, we're just going to do it. Like, try stop us, right? Of course that attitude is built into crypto because anytime you try and negotiate, you just get bogged down in bullshit and you're being disingenuous. It's literally the exact same thing that happened with the block size war.
Yeah, I was about to say.
That same thing of like...
It's a secret 2x. Meet in the middle, yeah.
When you're dealing with somebody who's just trying to got ulterior motives and just the gaslighting and delays and whatever is going on, at a certain point, it just gets down to this is not working. So, I don't know. Anyway, that might be a repeating pattern. So, everybody should just look out for that in their lives. Okay, community comment of the week. This one is from Fouad, who's been on the show, a regular listener, top chap. He posted in the Telegram group with chilling in my future house in VR. So he's got this nice VR room, living area set up, and he's got the Bitcoin Cash podcast playing on his fake virtual flat screen. He's in the chat right now. Shout out. This made me laugh so much because I wasn't exactly sure what the angle was here. Firstly, I found it amusing because I experienced the podcast as being on it, right? But I thought, people watch their NFL games on a big screen, right? So maybe it's prime time viewing. You got to watch the Bitcoin Cash podcast. I don't see why not.
So I was wrong. Metaverse did amount to something at least.
That's right. Exactly. You were roasting it before, but little do you know, Fouad is in there watching the Bitcoin Cash podcast. So all those billions of dollars, we got some quality innovation out of it. That's amazing. And then and I just also thought it was funny because he said, in my future house. So it was kind of okay, so in one sense, if he makes millions, gets rich off BCH, then he can have the house and get the flat screen and everything and do it for real. But then on the other hand...
Still watch the BCH podcast.
That's right. But then on the other hand, it's would it be any better if you were if it's already there, it's already on the flat screen, it sort of became a bit of a philosophical insight for me, as to how much better is flat screen VR versus real life VR. Real life VR, you get more of a accomplishment. You get more of a dopamine hit probably because it's not fake, right? But it's like Cypher eating the steak in the Matrix. Does it matter if you didn't know? Is a simulation only worse because you don't think it's a simulation? Anyway, that's different podcast. That's the philosophy, the drunk stream that we've got to do. Maybe episode 100 or something like that. We'll have to do on. But anyway, I'm glad you're enjoying the podcast in the metaverse. I'm glad we made it over there. That's absolutely amazing. Right, message to the community. Our perennial second last segment. So, as you know, chat to the community, open platform, whatever you think they need to hear.
For me?
Yeah. Just free talk. Go on.
Oh, okay. First of all, I would encourage everyone to get involved and take initiative, because those were the two things that really helped me. So take initiative, help out where you can, try to be more involved, and don't be afraid to just reach out to people, ask questions. Because if I could do it, self-teach programming to bring the circle back full circle, I would motivate anybody else to also try the journey and maybe build something, see how it goes, see if you like it. Or contribute. Everybody can contribute in his own way. We also need a lot of product people, marketing people, ID people. And one thing that I didn't mention in the show, and I'm also very excited about, is the concept of prediction markets. Or maybe I mentioned it once. because that's another thing enabled by cash tokens, and I think it has a lot of liberty implications, all the prediction market stuff. So I would also encourage everybody to learn about prediction markets. Maybe they could also solve some of the misallocation we talked about before. So we can predict the future better in advance and aggregate everybody's perception of what the future will look like. So that's one thing that I think, that's Jason's big idea for Bitcoin Cash, to build prediction markets. And I'm very excited for his vision. So he really started at the bottom layer, but he seems to be working his way up. So I'm excited to see what else he brings in the coming years. And I'm very excited for the Cash Tokens launch day. So I hope there will be a stream or something, or at least
there will be. I can say that.
Okay.
Involved in
would be happy
partly
to
organizing that. So.
Oh, okay, super cool. So we'd be happy to join or be. Awesome. So I guess I'll talk to you then again in 23 days.
Yeah. On that note about the prediction markets, I think that's insanely powerful, and it's one of the things that it's possible on Ethereum. But I know that there was some projects that were looking into that. There's one called Augur. I think there was a couple others. And they basically
is one I followed.
Okay, all right. Oh well, yeah. Maybe if you know the details, like let us know. But just the impression I got was they kind of got going, and they were like, "This is a pretty cool idea." But just as they were sort of starting to get some traction, the fees went up, and it suddenly was unviable, right? So then they had to move out of the ETH ecosystem, and then they lost all the network effect and momentum that was going on, and then it kind of was back to square one, right?
Yeah. So the Ethereum ecosystem is very interesting because it is so frictionalized, because they all need layer 2s. Like Arbitrum or Optimism, or you have like 20 or 25 different layer 2 solutions on Ethereum. Now even Coinbase launched their own layer 2 for Ethereum, but all these like fracture the network effect so much. So a liquidity pool on one layer 2 can't interact with any other thing on any lending or borrowing protocol or another. So just like your network effect, and even your wallets and your whole user base is like fractured into all these like almost other coins, except they have the same volatility, but they are totally different ecosystems. So I think this is very interesting for Ethereum, but it's also another, it's a roundabout way to fix the scaling problem. So let's just like launch 20 different layer 2s, and then every one of these can take some of the users, but none will have the network effect. So that's why I'm also very optimistic that Bitcoin Cash can have like all transactions on main chain. We can still have side chains, but I mean the throughput of the layer 1 will be large enough that we don't need all these extra layers just for scaling.
Yeah, I've seen an interesting narrative sort of popping up that people have been discussing and been a bit of chat about this and that, with people worried that Ethereum is kind of toppling over, or at least getting into some murky waters. And this is not the usual BTC maxis don't like Ethereum, but people maybe more from the Ethereum side saying, guys, we need to think about this carefully, that in having so many layer 2s, that the original plans, which were to upgrade the layer 1 and then layer 2 was kind of like a bonus, it's now sort of over time turning into layer 2 is the primary plan, and layer 1 is kind of, we kind of got as far as we're going to go with that. And that as you have that happen, there's kind of a process where people's minds, the mind share shifts, and then on top of that, the money shifts. So then everybody starts putting all their money into the tech and the devs, and becomes layer 2s, right? So then layer 1 becomes a bit neglected. So then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because nobody's working on layer 1, nobody's trying to fix it, nobody's trying to improve it or whatever, and all the innovation has moved on to the next layer. And so then everything just becomes a bit stagnant. And then if you have a problem on layer 2, then what? You kick the can up to layer 3? That's kind of seems to be what the BTC people are doing, right? Their Lightning Network isn't really getting there. So they're kind of like, chow me and mince. That's gonna fix everything, or federated channels or whatever, right? They're trying to pull the next rabbit out of the hat, and it's just a bit nonsense. So anyway, that's something maybe we'll talk about more on the show if that kind of comes to pass a bit more in the broader crypto space. But just a heads up, what's sort of trending thought, I would say, in the crypto community that I've noticed being stirred up. Right, so supporter appreciation. This now has its own slide. We've got the patrons, Ricky and HP. Thank you very much. You're absolutely amazing. And our sponsor, General Protocols. Check out bchbull.com. They have recently added a bunch of different stuff, but one thing they added was a premiums page, which I was playing with this morning, and it's amazing. So go and check that out. If you haven't looked at BCH Bull in a while, you can go on and it tells you all the different pairs and hedging all along, and then it just says, like which ones are in demand, basically. So the ones that are heavily in demand, you might have to pay a premium for, like maybe it's 1% to lock, Chinese yuan, which they also added, with 2x leverage for 3 weeks, right? Maybe that costs 1%. But some of them can be in positive because they have too much demand on one side. So you can actually put your money into a contract, either hedging or long, depending on what the market conditions are. And in doing that, they will pay you to open the contract, right? Even more than the cost of the fee of opening the contract. So like the one I did was like 1.5%. So it cost me 0.5% to open a contract, but they immediately paid me. So I sent in the BCH for my contract, and then I immediately, like, the transaction came back, straight away, but then they paid me 1.5% for being in it. So the contract may or may not work out, but I've essentially already got a discount from it. I was mind blown. I was thinking, this is the best thing ever. And as volumes ramp up on that, as more and more people are using this, especially as big players start using any hedge, those premiums will essentially mean if you're just a punter, you can profit off. If all the big players want to go hedge, they will essentially pay you to go long, and vice versa, right? So that was just super cool. So check them out, bchbull.com.
Yeah, I know we both did some testing of the BCH Bull once it was still in alpha or something, and the product has really improved a lot. So also the UI, but just the general flow. It's come a long way already.
They've been taking a lot of criticism, a lot of user feedback is what I meant to say. It's not, people have not been saying your thing sucks, but as much as when people say, look, we want this or change this or whatever, they really make it a priority. And like this premiums page, that was one of the things I suggested, a bunch of people suggested, and they've delivered it. So I've got, I'm thrilled. They're doing great stuff. I mean, it's still not, mega polished like it will be in a couple of years, but at the rate they're improving, I'm so optimistic about that. And then we also have a new section of shout outs that we're going to give every episode to our flip starter. So I ran a flip starter for 20 BCH to fund. For anybody who doesn't know, who didn't see that or what have you, now you know. So that's part of the monetization of this show, because I thought everybody seems to be making money on Flipstarter. And while I was initially a little hesitant to do it, and I have not jumped straight into it in the past, I thought, and I wrote about this in the Flipstarter, that the show now is at a quality and we get enough positive feedback from listeners that it would basically be worth it. Before this point, I sort of felt like, it's still a bit scrappy. We're still just doing it casually, asking for money. That's a bit much. Obviously, we did have the patrons and we got a sponsor, right? But we just, Flipstarter seemed to be where the money was. So I thought, okay, well, maybe this is another way that we can contribute to the monetization of the show. And it's nothing to do with the show continuing. If the Flipstarter had not been funded, I'm not shutting down the show, and it's not viable. So it wasn't like a threat or anything, but I just thought, okay, let's see how it goes. It went really well. It got funded in whatever it was, 12 hours or something. Definitely less than a day. In fact, I had a bunch of people say to me, Jeremy, that was too quick. I didn't get a chance to contribute. So if you're in that category, well, first of all, you can donate anytime at bitcoincashpodcast.com and just send us BCH. But secondarily to that, if you want to wait for the next one, there'll be another one almost certainly. So the Flipstarter we did was 20 BCH for episodes 76 to 85 of the show. And one of the things in there was that anybody who donated at least one BCH could get a shout out at the end of every show. So that's what we're here doing now. So shout out and thank you very much. Really appreciate it to Majamalu, which is Marcelo, Renegade, Cheapy, aka Cheap Lightning, Emergent Reasons, Unspent.app, Molecular, Bitcoin Cash, Autist, and Mini Satoshi. Thank you very much for your support via the Flipstarter. Been amazing. And that pretty much does it for the show. So we've got to do the shout outs. Firstly, you can go check out bitcoincashpodcast.com, the start guide, FAQs, links and all of that are available there. Thank you everyone for watching. Matthew, do you have any shout outs you wanted to give, and where can people find more of you?
So the best place to follow me is probably on Twitter. And thank you for having me on. I think that's the main thing I still wanted to say. I had a blast being on. So, and then please try out the web wallet. I love to get some feedback, and it's a chance to play around with cash tokens early. So then you'll be as much an expert as anybody because you have used it before anyone else. So.
Yeah, be on the cutting edge of innovation.
Yeah,
Jett,
exactly.
any shout outs?
I do have one. So this shout out is to Chris Troutner. I was complaining in one of my Telegram groups about some raccoons that I've got getting into my compost. And he was like, hey, seaweed's a good deterrent. So went out to the ocean, got some seaweed. No raccoons last night. Seems pretty promising.
All right. And my shout out, it's hard because I often have things that during the lead up to the episode, I think, oh, I should shout out this or that. And then by the time we get to the end of the episode, I've completely blanked on it. I'm going to have to start writing them down or putting them on the slides or something like that. But I think probably anybody who's been involved in either funding or working on some of the flip starters, especially the technical ones, like separately to this, there was also a flip starter that Callan ran for the Electron Cash tokens integration for 68 BCH, and that also got funded in under a day. And so that's amazing because Electron Cash is definitely one of the best wallets, especially the desktop one, and with cash tokens is going to be so big, like we're going to need that. And I'm just so excited to see that, like, people who are contributing regularly to the scene, who are putting up results, if they run a flip starter, it just gets funded, right? So that's such a good sign. I think people are becoming more judicious about where they have resources to allocate. You know, they're not just throwing it at anybody who's just passing by and says, I'm running a flip starter. And just the whole process of running a flip starter was kind of exciting enough for people to give it a punt in the past. I think, you know, thankfully that phase seems to be ended.
Yeah,
people have
at some point there seem to be like a few low quality projects that also took off, but for now, for the cash tokens upgrade, it really seems like the initial way to get like developers and important projects funded. So I hope still we can move to something more entrepreneurial, where people like can earn their own money with their projects. But for the time being, I think Flipstarter, over the last few months, for everything cash tokens related, has been an essential part of the ecosystem.
Well, there's certainly some use cases where it's more suitable than others, and like on this show, right? It's not just the flip starter. You know, we have the patrons, we have the sponsors. Sometimes people donate, just one-off donations, and we're also sort of slowly getting there with the Twitch and YouTube ad revenue. You know, so there's a few different things. So in that way, the flip starter is kind of supplemental, and I think that can be nice. That maybe that's how we'll see the scene develop. And I think also because people in the ecosystem know that the flip starter exists, you know, maybe people who do contribute to flip starters like start to sort of set aside money and just say, you know what, I'm going to, have this money, and when a good flip starter comes up that I believe in, I will contribute to it. Like the Electron Cash one was for 69 or 68 BCH, but it had 29 contributors, which I thought was pretty amazing. You know, that was everything from, a third of it all in one chunk, or maybe a bit more, down to somebody who only just put in a few sats. But that power of that like funding is so amazing without having a central platform, it cuts out all that overhead. So the efficiency on the money is very, very high. It's not if the person doesn't deliver, of course. So that's where the community has had to dial things in a bit. But there's no friction. And like, if you didn't contribute to our Flipstarter, you don't want to, or any other Flipstarter, you don't even need to know what happened. The things just magically kind of emerge. They just get funded. Like, it's all operates in a very smooth, decentralized way. So I think that's already been amazing. And just wait till we've got cash tokens with this as well too. And you can get a receipt for your Flipstarter. Maybe somebody will start that you can build up a gallery of like all the Flipstarters you've contributed to. And that's how people will build up rep in the community, being like, I funded this and I funded that. And that's going to be sick, right? Go on.
Who knows? I was just agreeing with you. That's definitely a possible use case. I made a demo for something like this a while ago. So if anybody wants to run with it, I don't think I currently have the time, but I would love to see someone else run with this.
All right. Well, they can get in contact with you about that, and who knows what we'll see with all the stuff coming in the future.
And there was one thing.
May 5th.
One point I still wanted to make is you said that things magically happen, and indeed it seems as if things magically happen, but of course there are people working hard behind the scenes. So if I want to do a shout out to anybody, it's to the people behind the scenes who don't get much appreciation but still put in a lot of work but just don't get recognized.
Yes, very, very true. And I want to, obviously I agree with you. People do tons of work behind the scenes. But if you are someone like that and you do feel like you're not being recognized or you're not being appreciated or whatever, then maybe like stand up for yourself a bit in that way. Like, consider if you're doing something really valuable, find a way to promote it a bit more. It can be as simple as you can come, obviously, talk to me, send me an email, jeremy@bitcoincashpodcast.com. You can get in the Telegram groups, on Reddit, on Twitter. If you go to bitcoincashpodcast.com, there's like links to a lot of that stuff. Just click around and you'll find it. So get involved and make some noise. And if you need to run a Flipstarter or something like that, even just for a small amount, like look into it and consider it, because that's how BCH should operate, right? I think people have been more selective about what they donate to over time, but I think people have still got a very generous spirit in terms of valuable contributions to the community. If you are doing something that the people value, I think that will be recognized. Certainly if you can present it in the right way as well. There's an element of that, but that's also just a learning experience and more, skills and things you can learn too there. So yeah, that will do it, I guess, for all of that. Thank you one more time to all our Flipstarter donators as the new contributors show. Been amazing, and until next time.
Till next time.
The greatest story the world has ever known. The rise and rise of Bitcoin. 2022.
A single chance for the world, a single moment in time. Bankers captures all our cryptocurrency.